Have you heard the buzz? Something really big just happened in the immigration world. And if you've been waiting for your green card, this could change everything. Imagine shaving months, even years, off the process. Imagine no more endless waiting. No more worrying if you'll even get that interview date. Sounds almost too good to be true, right? Well, stick with me, because what USCIS just announced for 2025 has people talking everywhere, and for good reason. Now, let's be real for a second. If you've been through the US immigration system, or even if you're just starting, you know it's not exactly a smooth ride. It's paperwork, delays, interviews, and let's not forget the constant stress of waiting. Every single update matters, because one small change can mean the difference between waiting years or finally holding that green card in your hand. That's why today's news is so exciting. Here's the headline everyone's buzzing about. USCIS is dropping the interview rule for certain applicants. Yes, you heard me right. Dropping it. That means some green card applications could be processed a whole lot faster. We're talking about the possibility of getting approved in as little as 6 months. 6 months. That's half a year compared to what usually feels like an eternity. But wait, I know what you're thinking. Does this apply to everyone? Who exactly benefits from this change? Is it really as good as it sounds, or are there hidden catches? That's exactly what we're going to break down in this video, step by step, so you'll know exactly what it means for you or someone you love who's applying. The truth is, this update could be life-changing, but only if you understand how it works and whether you qualify. That's why I'm so glad you're here today. I want to walk you through the details, clear up the confusion, and share the practical takeaways that could help you get closer to your green card faster than you ever thought possible. So before we dive into all of that, do me a quick favor, hit that like button right now. It really helps this video reach more immigrants who need this information, and trust me, you'll want to stay tuned for what's coming next. All right, so let's get straight into it, because I know you're curious about how this actually works. When we hear green card in 6 months, the first reaction is usually excitement, right? But then the next thought that pops into your head is, okay, who really gets this benefit? Is this just hype? Or is USCIS actually making a meaningful change that people like you and me can count on? The big piece of news here is that USCIS has officially dropped the in-person interview requirement for certain categories of green card applicants. Now, if you've ever gone through or even just prepared for that interview stage, you know how stressful it is. You've got to wait for the appointment notice. You're on edge about what questions they'll ask. You're double-checking all your paperwork. Sometimes you're even hiring attorneys to go with you just in case. It's nerve-wracking. And then on top of that stress, the interview stage is often one of the biggest reasons your case gets delayed. Because let's be real, there are thousands and thousands of people in line, and only so many officers to conduct these interviews. By cutting out that step, USCIS is basically unclogging one of the biggest bottlenecks in the system. That means your paperwork can move through faster, and in some cases, you might not even have to deal with the anxiety of sitting across from an officer and answering questions. For so many applicants, that's like a dream come true. Now, let me slow down for a second, because I don't want to make this sound like everyone is automatically going to get their green card in 6 months now. It's not quite that simple. USCIS isn't throwing out interviews across the board. What they've said is that for applicants who meet certain criteria, like having super clean backgrounds, very straightforward cases, and no red flags, they can waive the interview altogether. In other words, if your case looks simple and doesn't raise questions, you might be one of the lucky ones who gets pushed through without having to go into that USCIS office. And think about what that means. For years, so many of you have been caught in the backlog. Some people wait 18 months, 24 months, sometimes even longer, just to get their green card. You make plans around it. You're constantly refreshing your case status online. You're stressed every time you check the mailbox. And suddenly, now we're talking about a pathway where you might cut that wait down to half a year. That's huge. It's more than just a faster approval. It's peace of mind. It's stability. It's being able to move forward with your life without everything hanging in limbo. I know for many of you, the green card isn't just a piece of plastic. It represents security. It means you can finally breathe easier about your future. You can apply for better jobs, travel without fear of not being let back in, and maybe even start planning for citizenship down the road. It's the foundation for building a life here. And when that process drags on, it feels like your life is stuck on pause. That's why this change hits so close to home for so many families. But let's talk about the real question you probably have. How do you know if this applies to you? USCIS hasn't put out a one-size-fits-all rule where everyone's case is identical. Instead, they're reviewing cases individually. So if you've got a clean record, your forms are filled out correctly, your evidence is strong, and your application doesn't raise any eyebrows, you're exactly the kind of person who might benefit from this. On the other hand, if your case has complications, maybe you've had previous immigration issues, maybe there are gaps in your evidence, or maybe your story requires more clarification, USCIS might still want to sit down with you. And honestly, that's not a bad thing either. It's just their way of making sure everything is accurate before they make a final decision. Now, let me share something important here. Even if you don't fall into the no interview category, this change could still help you indirectly. Because if USCIS is taking thousands of straightforward cases and moving them through quickly without scheduling interviews, that frees up officers and appointment slots for the rest of the applicants. So even if you do need an interview, you might not be waiting as long for it to happen. It's like unclogging a traffic jam. Once the easy cars can move ahead, the whole line starts flowing more smoothly. That's the ripple effect that could benefit everyone. Now, let's imagine for a moment that you're one of the lucky ones. Picture this. You file your paperwork in January. Normally, you'd be thinking, okay, maybe I'll hear something by the end of next year. But instead, by summer, you've got an approval notice in your hand. That means you can finally make the big decisions you've been holding off on. You can move forward with buying a home, taking a better job, maybe even traveling back to see family without worrying if you'll be allowed back into the country. 6 months. It's not just a timeline, it's freedom. And let me add this. USCIS is making these changes because they're under pressure to modernize. The backlogs have been brutal, and people have been frustrated for years. So this isn't just about one small rule change. It's part of a bigger effort to streamline the system, reduce waiting times, and make things more efficient. We've already seen digital filing becoming more common, online accounts being expanded, and now this shift with interviews. It's like USCIS is finally catching up to the reality of how much demand there really is. That's why I always encourage you. Don't go through this process blindly. Stay informed, stay connected, and surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through. Because at the end of the day, the immigration journey isn't just about filling out forms. It's about your life, your family, and your future. And speaking of staying connected, if this update is giving you hope, or if you're finding value in what we're talking about right now, make sure you hit that like button. It really does help get this video in front of more immigrants who need this information, people who might be in the same boat as you. Plus, it tells me that you want more videos like this, and I'm more than happy to keep breaking down these updates in plain language for you. So to wrap this section up, here's the bottom line. USCIS dropping the interview requirement for certain applicants is a game changer. It won't apply to every single person, but even if it doesn't directly apply to you, it can still help speed things up across the board. For the lucky ones, we're talking about green cards in as little as 6 months, which is honestly something we've been waiting to hear for years. It's proof that change is possible, and it's a reminder that your patience and persistence can really pay off. Now, don't go anywhere, because up next we're going to break down exactly what types of cases are most likely to benefit, and I'll share some practical tips to make your application stronger in 2025. Trust me, you won't want to miss this.